Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakarottam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjalimanatosmi laye sambodhayet chittam vikshiptam shamayet punaha sakashayam vijaniyat samapraptam nachalayet. Om. In our last class, we studied the 5 states, 5 avasthas of the Chitta. So here we have got to, very carefully note these words, because the 5 kinds of Chittas will be discussed later. But here we are talking about 5 states of the Chitta, also known as avastha, 5 Chitta avasthas, which is, we said, Kshipta, Mudha, Vikshipta, Ekagra, and Niruddha. So these are the states, the avasthas. And Chitta is made up of Antahkarana. Karana means tool, Antaha means inner tool. The inner tool consists mainly of Manas, Buddhi and Ahankara as far as the relevance to Yoga Shastra is concerned. Of course, there is also the memory. Memory is there, but the thing is, what is it that affects the avastha of the Chitta is the 3 sum, Manas, Buddhi and Ahankara. So let's look at this word and how it is derived. This Chitta is derived from the word Chit or Chiti. So what is this Chit? This Chit is part of the Swarupa Lakshana of Parabrahman. So you may recall that there is what is known as Swarupa Lakshana and there is Tatastha Lakshana. 2 ways of knowing anything. Any object, if we want to understand, we have to look at it from the 2 angles. One is called Swarupa Lakshana, that is what is the form. Another is called Tatastha Lakshana, and we have discussed this little earlier in our technical terms. So Swarupa Lakshana is the nature of things. Tatastha Lakshana is what points to the nature. So we were talking about Parabrahman. The Tatastha Lakshana is the words. Satchidananda is Brahma. So this set of words, Satchit and Ananda, is only a pointer to Brahma. We should not misunderstand that it is Brahma. So in this Satchitananda, whatever is part of the Absolute, which is Parabrahman, indicated by these words, Brahma Swarupa Lakshana is Satchidananda Swarupa, but Tatastha Lakshana or indication is the words Sat, Chit and Ananda. So in this triad of Sat, Chit and Ananda, Chit is the pure consciousness part of Parabrahman. Pure is the operative word. That means this consciousness of Parabrahman is not affected by any of the avasthas. So there are the 5 avasthas, Kshipta, Vikshipta, etc. All these 5 avasthas are applicable only to the word Chitta and not Chit. So this is an important distinction we have got to make, because Chit has no avasthas. It is pure consciousness. But it is from this Chit or pure consciousness, form side of the universe is created. There is the form. Universe has got form. It has got mass. It has got shape. It has got qualities. It has got quantity. all of these things must have a basis. So the basis for the form side of the universe is called Chit or Chiti. And it has got a power. That is why we also see in the Lalita Sahasranama, Chit Shakti Chetana Rupa. Chit Shakti, Chiti or Chit Shakti is the consciousness. So we can perceive consciousness, but we cannot perceive the basis of consciousness. Consciousness is perceived, and that therefore it becomes Chaitanyam, and the perceived consciousness is based upon the abstract, unknowable Chiti. Why this is important? Because it is through this Chitta, the pure consciousness, the universe is created. Now, only because this Chitta or consciousness is ever present, not only ever present, but it is never changing. And it is beginningless and it is endless. Anadi, Ananta, creation is possible. This again we have seen in many times. The metaphor of the screen in a movie theater can be understood as the Chitta on which the universe of the movie is projected. And this Chitta, the screen cannot change. So this is the basis. Now, we have got to come from the universe macrocosm to microcosm. So what does this Chitta do? This Chitta reflects in the microcosm called Jiva. An important point. So the reflection of Chitta in the microcosm or Jivatma or the individual is called Chitta. So we are talking about Chitta Vritti Nirodha. We have to determine what is this Chitta. Therefore, this Chitta is the reflection of the absolute Chitta in the Jivatma. So why is this point, we are laboring on this point? It is because this Chitta, because it is a reflection of Chitta, and Chitta being the consciousness principle of Parabrahman, Paramatma reflects in the Jivatma as a Chitta. That is the important point here. Thus, this reflection of Chitta in the Jivatma becomes Chitta. So what is this reflecting medium? Because something has to reflect, isn't it? The reflecting medium that reflects Chitta is known as Chitta. So as soon as we say this Chitta is the basis for creation in the universe, Chitta must become the basis for the creation of the individual, isn't it? Does it sound logical? So what does the Jivatma do? The Jivatma materializes his individual world and lives in it and evolves by using Chitta. What does Paramatma do? Parabrahman do? Parabrahman uses the Chitta to create the world and inheres in the world. And that is why in the whole universe Paramatma is pervading. Likewise, the Jivatma, because of the reflection of the Chitta in the Chitta of the individual, what he does is he creates, lives and evolves in his own world. This is why the Chitta gets avasthas. We have to prove why should my Chitta have these 5 avasthas? The reason is it is because of the reflecting medium and the way in which the reflecting medium is functioning displays whether the Chitta has the avastha of either Kshipta or Nirodha. If it is a reflecting medium which has got this distortion of the original Chitta, by means of yoga, it is possible to perfect this Chitta to become Chitta. You see? That's the yoga, that's the basis of how the Yoga Shastra got built up. Because there is nothing wrong in the original light of Chaitanyam, which is Chitti. But from Chitti, somehow when it lands on the reflecting medium of the Chitta, the distortion took place, but still the ability of the Chitta for this consciousness is not lost, because we are all conscious beings and we did not lose our conscious nature, and therefore conscious nature is reflected, but that conscious nature is reflected in a distorted manner, and therefore the yogi takes responsibility for this distortion, and then he works towards perfection. That is why these steps are given. From Kshipta you go to Vikshipta, and from Vikshipta you go to Ekagra, and from Ekagra you go to Niruddha. And this is possible by yoga, we say. In other words, until the yogi gets perfected by perfecting the Chitta medium, and once he does that, he unites with the Paramatma. In other words, he gets absorbed in the Paramatma, so the Kaivalya is achieved, so yoga becomes a Samadhi. So we said Yuja Samadhau. So in essence, when the reflecting medium Chitta manifesting as Manas Buddhi Ahankara is purified, then it becomes Chitta. And as soon as the individual's Chitta becomes purified, Chitta becomes Chitta, he becomes Paramatma, isn't it? This is also the basis of the argument of saying Jivatma Paramatma. When the Chitta becomes Chitta, it becomes one. Jivatma Paramatma Aikya, which is spoken of, Kaivalya, which is spoken of, Samadhi is spoken of, is the purification of Chitta to become Chitta. So we have got to again be very careful not to misunderstand Chitta as a material medium. See, here is another scope for misunderstanding. Unlike a mirror, which is matter or a material medium, unlike the screen in the theater is a material medium, Chitta is not a material medium. It is actually fundamentally consciousness only. Then in that case, if it is not matter, a reflecting matter, then how did this immaterial Chitta become Chitta? How did that happen? Here, Yoga Shastra will come and say, because of the association with Prakriti. So a new twist is presented here, because suddenly Prakriti comes. So why should Prakriti enter into the picture is the next question. The interesting part is Chit without the association of Prakriti cannot become Chitta. So therefore Chitta can function only in the presence of Prakriti. But Prakriti is inert. It is jada, and therefore it cannot function. So therefore Chiti or consciousness, which is Purusha, the absolute Purusha, had to become part of the microcosm. Am I clear? This is a little intricate subject.
Ashtok, can you repeat it from, the Prakriti influence? Can you repeat from there, please?
Yeah. See, now Chiti is pure consciousness. Pure consciousness Chiti can, which is the characteristic of Paramatman. When can it become Chitta? It can become Chitta only in association with Prakriti. Because without Prakriti, which has got the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamo gunas, specific Prakriti, Chit cannot become Chitta. Now, Chit in association with the Prakriti, Chit borrowed from Paramatma. That's why this is a dualistic philosophy, whom we call as Purusha, and that Purusha in association with the Prakriti becomes a Chitta and it functions. So where is the contamination? Because it is because of the contamination of Chiti that we got the 5 avasthas. So how did this contamination happen? The contamination happened because of the individuation of the Prakriti in the Jivatma, and this individuation takes place because of karma of the Jivatma. See how every thread starts getting connected. So, how can we summarize this theory? Chitta may be understood as a product of both Prakriti and Purusha. Purusha is Chiti and Prakriti is the Trigunas. When the Chiti of Purusha and the Trigunas of Prakriti, they come together, then it becomes Chitta and therefore creates the avasthas, the 5 avasthas. So this polemics that we are doing now, how it helps us is to identify how is it I even landed here. So a lot of people do ask the question, what did I do to experience the world as I am experiencing now? Sukha, dukkha, etc. Sukha, dukkha is so specific to the individual, and it is also affecting the individual and the environment. All of these things is because of this beautiful, challenging association of Jivatma, which consists of the combination of Prakriti and Purusha. And therefore, of course, later on we are going to see by means of yoga, tada drashtaswarupe avasthanam, then you go into the pure consciousness identification. We will see how. So therefore we identified these sattva rajas tamo gunas, which constitutes the Prakriti, is the one which creates the individual avasthas. Because each individual brings to the table a peculiar combination of trigunas. Because trigunas, it's not purely just 3 colors coming together. It is all shades of black, all shades of red, all shades of white, coming together with Chitti. So with just those three having different shades, literally infinite number of Purushas can be created, which is what has happened. And therefore now, depending on the combination of the gunas, the various states occur. Now let us see what is the formula that we can derive for these various avasthas. Kshipta avastha we took up as the first example, as a scattered avastha. And for this we also took an example of the story of the king and the three daughters. Actually, I made a little modification to the story of King Lear. This is exactly from King Lear that I was giving this story, and the three daughters. And here, this King Lear's mind, which is scattered, what gunas were involved in that? It was Rajah Pradhanam, that is, the dominant guna was Rajas. The associate guna which supported it is called Tamas, which is called as Sahakari Guna, technically called as Sahakari Guna. Then Sattva was present, but it was disabled. Who disabled it? Is it luck? Is it somebody else? Is it his minister? Who disabled it? He disabled himself. King Lear himself disabled his own Sattva Guna. But Sattva Guna also should be present. But what does this Sattva Guna do? Sattva Guna just makes him aware of an agitated state of mind. So in the Kshipta state, when my mind is in a Kshipta state, I am aware that my mind is agitated. Who makes that awareness? Sattva Guna makes it awareness. But what is the dominant guna here? Rajas. And this dominant Rajo Guna is abetted by the Tamo Guna. And so now I want to know which one of my daughters love me more. And therefore the Viveka will be lost. He will never be able to see the consequences of such a conversation. Such a conversation. And it also, of course, showed insecurity. So when does a person feel insecure? A person feels insecure when the conflict of Rajas and Tamas takes place. Another important point to note. Then, in the Moodha state, what was happening? The Rajas and Sattva Guna were both ineffective. Look at the story of our fellow who wanted to cross the forest, and he came across a box of golden coins. The Sattva Guna that he was cautioned, he must cross the forest before the oil runs out, that was clouded. The Rajoguna was stymied because he has to proceed. He doesn't proceed. The Rajoguna was stymied, and therefore he gets stuck in the forest. And hence, a yogi has to realize that both the Kshipta state and Moodha state are Vyavahara Ayogyam. Vyavahara Ayogyam means it is useless in meaningful transaction. So the derivative of this discussion is, whenever our mind is in Kshipta or Moodha state, we should not take any significant decision, because our decision making will be wrong. See suddenly how it becomes very practically relevant, because every moment we may have to take very important decisions, and lot of decisions people take by impulse and then suffer later. So what do we mean by impulse? Impulsive decision making is decisions taken in the Kshipta and the Muda state. So now we come to the third state, that is the Vikshipta state. In the Vikshipta state, the main guna that is present is Sattva Pradhanaha. And the associate guna is Rajas, and Tamas has got only a trace. That is why, though our friend who wanted to become a disciple of the Buddha was actually coming back to his hut, go back to the hut, this toggling he went on making. But in spite of all this toggling, ultimately lands up in the Buddha's in the Buddha's place, and therefore we see that in the Vikshipta state it is Vyavahara Yogyam. 1 second, please.
No, you're fine. ನನಗೆ ಇಯರ್ ಪ್ಲಗ್ಸ್ ತೊಗೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತೀನಿ ಮಾಮ್ಗೆ, ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಕೂಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಥಿಂಗ್ ಇಯರ್ ಪ್ಲಗ್ಸ್
ಇದ್ದವನೊಬ್ಬಿಡು. You take the headphone. ಅದು she won't
ಇಯರ್ ಪ್ಲಗ್. ವೇಟ್ ಬರತ್ತೆ.
Thank you. So we came to the Vikshipta state. Vikshipta state decisions can be taken. And usually we do take decisions in the Vikshipta state, but sometimes those decisions may turn out to be good, sometimes it may turn out to be wrong. And therefore there's a 50-50 chance. Then you come to the fourth of the avastha, which is the Ekagra avastha. In Ekagra avastha, the Sattva Pradhana, it is mainly dominated by Sattva. And the Chitta is in Sthiratvam, that is, it is in stable condition. And it is when it was in the stable condition, and the dominant guna, because of the intelligence of the person, then it becomes stable. As soon as it becomes stable, this yogi becomes fit for abhyasa, which we will see later, for vairagya, and for viveka, for ashtanga yoga. All the techniques that Yoga Shastra is going to talk about later, Abhyasa, Vairagya, then Maitri, Karuna, etc., all those things are dependent on this one guna called Ekagra guna. Now, even in Ekagra guna, because of the various vasana and samskaras of the individual, Rajas can creep in. Why am I pointing this out? Because if Ekagra, one-pointed focus, was the ultimate avastha of the Chitta, then the scripture need not have pointed out to the next one, Niruddha, isn't it? If the fifth state of the Chitta called Niruddha is mentioned, that means in Ekagra also there is a defect, or a possibility for a defect. So what is the defect that could be, where Ekagra also could be a challenge? It is where somehow the Jivatma applies an increased Rajas. All this is telling us that the Jivatma has a volition in applying one or the other guna. I can make Sattva guna dominant, I can make Raja guna dominant, I can make Tamo guna dominant, I can make the combination of the gunas as I want by means of buddhi. So let us see in the ekagra state, suppose rajas is included, ekagra state also could veer us away from application of abhyasa, vairagya and then ashtanga yoga, without which karya, all our activities cannot dissolve into cause or karana. It is only when the karya dissolves into karana, what is later going to be called as purusha-khyati, what is to be called as kaivalya, what is to be called as moksha, does not happen. So in the one-pointed focus of ekagra, it is possible to dissolve all activities, karya, into the original cause. What is the original cause? Chitti, consciousness. Here is the point of departure. Point of departure, whether a ekagra person is capable of yoga or incapable of yoga, depends on how much of rajoguna is introduced. There was an employee of a king, and he worked for his king for 25-30 years. And now he has turned about 60 years old, and then he sits one day, and his wife also, they talk about, they review their life, and the wife tells, you have been in service of this king for 30 years, but look at us, we have remained middle class. Is that not true? We have worked so long in the most prosperous nation, and we have remained middle class. So he goes to the king and says, Sir, I am so disappointed that in spite of my working for so long, I have not become rich. Can you please make me rich? And the king says, yeah, I understand. So let us do this. From sunrise to sunset, I want you to swim across this river. You go from this bank to the other bank and come back to this bank. Every time you go to the other bank and come back to this bank, I will give you 1 gold coin. So as many number of times as you cross from sunrise to sunset, you can get so many coins. In one day you can become immensely rich. And now this fellow was a good swimmer, he was in good shape, he was in fit, and then he starts swimming at daybreak. The king and the minister and all those people who want to see have come there, and the king has sat there with a huge sack of gold coins. So 4 times, 5 times, 10 times he has swimmed across. 10, 15, 20 coins are accumulated. The minister is getting nervous. And then he's saying, Sir, at this rate, we are going to empty our treasury. Then the king says, no, don't worry, nothing will happen. Don't worry. The sun was about to set. Maybe another 1 minute. Then our hero, just one last lap, I will go. He goes and does reach the other bank, and on his return, he completely becomes absolutely tired and sinks, drowns. Tragic. And all the gold coins reverts to the treasury. Here there was ekagrata on the part of our man. But look at the rajas. He forgot the limitation of his energy. Because the ekagrata from the limitation of his body was clouded by his one-pointed focus on becoming rich. If only he had stopped, say, midway, when he knew he was becoming tired, he could have become far, far richer than he ever imagined. So then there was greed. So what is the guna of greed? Rajas. Introduce Rajas, ekagra kosave. That is why in ekagra dhyana, people talk about ekanta, people talk about noiselessness, people talk about not having any distraction in dhyana. It is because any of that is introduced, Rajas comes. Now we come to the Niruddha state. In Niruddha state, what is the characteristic? The characteristic is Guna Vaitrishnam. Later on, Patanjali himself talks about Guna Vaitrishnam. That means a person will be totally out of the clutches of the gunas in the Niruddha or the Nirodha state. There was this family, rather poor, and the husband was very sick, so he was bedridden, and the mother had to manage everything. And the least noise, ambient noise, would disturb the sick person. So he was not able to tolerate any noise whatsoever. But here, this couple had a young boy, and he was very, very fond of music, singing. You could not stop him from singing. So the mother says, please don't sing. It's going to disturb your father. Then he will keep quiet for half an hour, and again he cannot stop, he starts singing. Then after some time, the mother says, why don't you go outside, out of the house, sit under the tree and sing. He starts sitting under the tree and singing. Then the sick father is okay, because he is not hearing any noise. And this boy sings and sings and sings. Then this is the time of Akbar. And Akbar, as you all know, had the great Tansen in his court. And Tansen's music, mesmerizing. All the kings and emperors would give anything to listen to his music. You know that he was able to actually, through his singing, light up a lamp. In fact, Tansen was the inventor of the Deepaka Raga. He could make it rain. Meghamallar is also his creation. And with all this, Akbar once asked, you are such an amazing person. You have great Guru Kripa. Who is your Guru? Then he says, I do have a Guru. Can you take me to the Guru? No. If you go to the Guru, he will not even give you an interview. You cannot meet him. No, I want to listen to his music. I can take you to where my Guru is. But if you present yourself in his presence, he may not sing. So hide somewhere. Even if you are to give half of your kingdom, he will not sing for you. So you hide and listen to his music. So Akbar and Tansen go outside a small hut where his guru was actually living, and they sit behind a bush and listen to this phenomenal singing. And Tansen says, he is my Guru. He is Swami Haridas. And Swami Haridas was that boy who was singing outside of his house. And his vow was he will sing only for the Lord. All his music, all his singing was only for the Lord, and nothing could entice him to sing for others. Because as soon as a king, as soon as recognition comes, what happens? Kirti, yashas, money, pomp, power, so many things will come. And his focus, his nirodha of the mind for the Lord is lost. So in the niruddha mind, when we talk about guna vaitrishnam, in guna vaitrishnam what happens is the entire influence of prakriti disappears. See, that's what I'm trying to drive at. What happened to Swami Haridas? Swami Haridas would not sing for anybody other than Ishvara. Everything other than Ishvara is prakriti. Everything other than Ishvara is full of the three gunas. And because of his one-pointed focus, Swami Haridas' music was coming from a niruddha state of mind. Showing that for a yogi it is possible to go and achieve the nirodha state. And so with these 5 avastha analysis, we have to understand 4 important critical words of Yoga Shastra. The word yoga itself, chitta, as distinct from chiti, the vrittis and the nirodha. As soon as we know these 4 terms perfectly, the essential nature of Yoga Darshana is mastered. Hence, Chitta of Paramatma reflected in Jivatma as a Chitta. When the Chitta is associated with the Prakriti, then it becomes the Chitta of Jivatma, subject to the 5 states. And when this Chitta is actually knows how to manage the Sattva Rajas Tamo gunas, then from the Kshipta Vikshipta state, it is possible to move to the Niruddha state. So the entire burden of Patanjali's work is to make us understand the nature of the Trigunas. So Triguna as a Sattva guna is called Prakhya or illumination. Illumination of perfect knowledge. And Rajas is known as Pravritti, that is activity and engagement. Engagement with what? With objects. Activity involves movement. So movement and objects, engagement with activity is Rajoguna, and Tamas is Sthiti or maintenance. And when these are there, the Chitta has possibilities of various avasthas. So this Antakarana or Chitta has got 3 functions. And these 3 functions are Vishayagrahana or holding on to objects. And the second one is thinking or called Alochanam. And the third one is Nischaya or determining quality. So when these 3 are there, Chit is called Chitta. Chit becomes Chitta when there is Vishayagrahana, Alochana and Nischaya. When this happens, fluctuations of the vritti happens. when the fluctuations of the vritti happens, one has to do control or the nirodha. And we have to note, nirodha is not absence of vritti. It is not just the person is becoming an object or a jada. He is not becoming an inert entity. It is a vritti, but this vritti is a neutralizing vritti. So let us take one example. There is a vritti called anger. And when this anger is arising, when we are applying a neutralizing vritti of sneha or kshama, friendship or forgiving, so krodha or kopa is one vritti. The opposite vritti, which is kshama or sneha, is applied. The process of application of the opposite is called chitta vritti nirodha. So when the sutra says yogas chitta vritti nirodha, means what? Whenever we see a vritti belonging to one of the four of the classes, that is kshipta, vikshipta, mudha and ekagra with the rajas, if those four are identified, we have to apply the opposite vritti and balance it. And this neutralizing is called chitta vritti nirodha. Second sutra. Atha yoga anushasanam yogas chitta vritti nirodha. When this practice is perfected, what does chitta do? Chitta gives up its habit. Because what is habituated will have to be, that habit has to be dropped. When it gives up this habit, then the chitta, which has got two parts, that is, there is the prakriti part, there is the purusha part. That is how it became chitta. Chitta became chitta because of the combination of purusha prakriti. When the chitta vritti nirodha has taken place, the purusha part of the chitta merges with prakriti. The prakriti part of the chitta merges with the prakriti. The purusha part of the chitta becomes part of purusha. Tada drashtaswarupe avasthanam. Which one will go and repose in this seer? The chitta will go and repose in this seer by shedding the dominance of prakriti, which is the gunas. Now the question is, all this is beautiful, but when the sattva, we go on increasing the predominance of sattva, it somehow drags rajas and tamas also and makes the chitta look for siddhis and aishwaryas, animadi siddhis. That's why the whole of the third chapter is dealing with that. So the third chapter where it is seeking the various siddhis, the mind seeking the various siddhis, is because this yogi has come into the ekagra state, and insidiously the rajoguna will come and hijack the project. So a person gets attracted towards the various siddhis. In the next class I will tell you a beautiful story of how it happens. And then, so even though there is a predominance of sattva guna, still because of the trace of rajoguna and to the trace of tamas, a person is attracted towards powers. And as soon as a person is attracted to powers, it goes back into vikshipta avastha. That is how Prakriti actually what Prakriti does is it will not let us go. So some cautions have to be done, and therefore the impurities of tamas has to be completely removed by means of yoga. Only sattva and rajas must be allowed to exist as much as possible. Only tamas should be there is for the body to rest. At no other point of time there should be tamas in our chitta. When that happens, when the predominance of sattva and rajas are there, the chitta turns towards dharma, jnana and vairagya. It's only then. So when just tamas enough to sustain the body, and then chitta gets established in its swarupa, and therefore it becomes aware of the chit, which is the swarupa of the Purusha. So therefore, what is the project? The project is to increase our sattva guna to the maximum possible extent. And the method to do that is by means of this constant application to neutralize the various vrittis. That's why in the Mahabharata, there's a beautiful statement in the Shanti Parva which says, Nasti Sankhya Samam Jnanam, Nasti Yoga Samam Balam. There is no knowledge that is so revealing as Sankhya, and there is no power than having yoga. So how to achieve this state? We have to voluntarily draw boundaries, the Lakshmana Rekha around us. And in that Lakshmana Rekha, Rajoguna must be contained, and Satguna must be enhanced, and Tamoguna should not be allowed to creep in. Otherwise, we also get confused and believe that there is a Suvarna Mruga. That extraordinarily intelligent Sita also believes that there is a golden deer. So this is the essence of the vritti study. So in the next class, we will continue the study of the scripture. Thank you. Namaskar.